Hey guys, and welcome back to H's Media TV on YouTube. My name is Sam, and today I want to show you once again how to create your own news intro in Adobe After Effects. This tutorial is quite huge and it contains a lot of information, so I make three parts. The first part, today's part, is all about creating the background. So for example, in this case, how to create those kind of moving elements, how to create just an interesting looking background. Then in part 2 I will show you how to create the sphere element. You can also see in my news intro number 3. So it's just this world map on a sphere with those very little images on it. And then in the final part, part 3, I will show you how to create a cylindric element. You can also see in my news intro number 4. So yeah, like I said, it's very huge amount of information for you guys out there so that you can really create your own stunning news intros in After Effects. Before we start, I just want to say thank you for all the kind words, positive feedback, especially for my first news intro tutorial, which is still the best video on my channel. So yeah, like I said, thank you very much for all the nice feedback, and yeah, I hope that you will like these 3 tutorials as well. So I think we now should start. So like always, create a new composition. I will first close that project. Like always, go to composition, new composition. I choose size of HD and the frame rate of 25 and the duration of, let's say, 30 seconds. I think that should be enough. And then the composition name, let's call it construction comp. Okay. And yeah, before you start your news intro, you first have to think about the total design of your animation. So about the colors, about the different elements, because it's really important that your background matches your foreground animation to make a very perfect appearance for your channel or for your video. So really think about the colors. So if you want a white background, a blue background, if you want a blue, green, yellow animation. And yeah, after you thought about that, just keep that in mind and now start with your background. I always create a simple ramp as my background layer, so right click, new and solid, call it BG, color is white and make sure it's comp size and then click OK. Then go to your effects and presets window on the right side and type in ramp and apply this effect to your solid. Make sure that you drag this start color in the center of your image. And oh, by the way, change the ramp shape to radial. And then move this second control point a bit outwards to make a very smooth transition. And yeah, then change the colors to everything you want. I may choose a start color of, let's say, a very light gray, so maybe something about that. And the end color is something like, let's say, a kind of middle gray, so about 50%. Click OK. Then maybe adjust your end color to make a more smooth transition. So maybe something like that. Okay. By the way, you can also use an effect called 4 color ramp. So right click, generate and 4 color gradient, sorry. They will have a selection of 4 different colors, but I usually stick to a normal ramp with just 2 colors. Okay, then after that it's now time to add your elements. There are really tons and millions of ways how to create a background. I will just show you a couple of tricks and effects I usually use to create my backgrounds. And yeah, then it's up on you to mess around with the effects and yeah, try what you can get out of it. So therefore, the first thing I want to do is again import my blank news or world map, sorry. So like in the first tutorial, just download a blank world map from Google, for example. Of course, try to get one with alpha channel, so PNG file is perfect, and a very high resolution, so something like I do here with about 5,500 pixels. Then click and drag this into our construction comp, and then hit S for scale and scale it down to fit your comp size. I will now choose something about, let's say, 35%. Yeah, I think that looks good. And then you want to apply a very cool effect, which is called CC Ball Action. So go to the right side in your effects and presets window and type in CC Ball Action and apply this effect to your blank world map. And as you can see, this effect is now trying to create a lot of very small dots around our world map. And then we can mess around with the grid spacing and the ball size. I always recommend that you Leave everything else on default, because you will then change maybe the position in Z space or in 3D space, and we don't want to do that in this tutorial. So like I said, go to grid spacing and ball size and just type in some different values to see what you get out of it. So I will now try something about grid spacing, maybe 10, and the ball size maybe 50. Yeah, I think that starts to look quite good. Okay, and after that you can maybe change the blend mode, for example to soft light or overlay, or for example also to add, to make a very glow kind of effect. I will now choose something like soft light to make a very soft blending with the background. Okay, and after that you want to create a new solid again, so layer new solid. Call it, I don't know, rectangles for example, make it comp size and change the color to white and click OK. Then go to the effects and presets window again and type in fractal noise. Apply this effect to your solid. Then go to noise type and set it to block, fractal type to max. And as you can see, we now have a lot of those squares right here. So the next thing you want to do is maybe go to transform and scale it up. You can also scale them up independently, so if you uncheck uniform scaling, so then you can change the width and the height separately, but I will now just leave uniform scaling checked and scale it up to, let's say, something about, I think 500 in this case. Okay. Then the next thing you want to do is mess around with contrast and brightness. So I will set the contrast, for example, to 200 and lower the brightness to, let's say, something around -75, so that you get a bit less of those shapes right here. Then the next thing you want to do is alt-click this evolution stopwatch and just type in time multiplied by, let's say, a value of, I think 25 looks good. Of course, if you want a faster animation, you should choose a higher number. And if you want a more subtle change or animation, then you should choose a very low number, like 5 or 10. But yeah, as you can see, let's make a short RAM preview. This expression just animates these rectangles right here randomly. Okay, I think that, yeah, that really starts to look quite cool. And after that, you want to apply an effect called tritone. Okay, sorry, yeah. And then you can mess around with 3 colors, so highlights, midtones and shadows. Let's now choose only some grayscale, so no color, maybe something like that. And then hit U to close all settings. Of course, if you have a colored background, so a colored ramp right here, you should then choose, for example, the same colors. But like I said, it's up on your design to choose the colors wisely. Okay, then after that you may want to change the blend mode again to soft light, for example, or to overlay, or to multiply, or to add. It really depends on your taste. Of course, you can always lower the opacity. So for example, set it to 50%, for example. And then you may want to add again a fast blur. So type in fast blur, apply this effect to your solid again. Make sure to check repeat edge pixels to make a very good transition for the edges. And then increase the blurriness to, let's say, something about 75 maybe, or let's say 50. So that you can see that by time our background is just very subtle changes, but it still looks a bit more interesting in my opinion than just without these rectangles or just a blank world map. So it just adds a bit more details to your background. You can then of course also duplicate these rectangles, maybe mess around with the contrast, the brightness, or even the animation, evolution, complexity. Or you can also, for example, right click, choose transform and flip horizontal, for example. Then choose blend mode to add, and maybe lower the opacity to something about 10%. It's really up on you to add more and more detail to your background to make it look more and more perfect. Okay, then let's close these settings right here and create another solid. Okay, call it grid. Click OK. Then go to your effects and presets window and type in grid as well. and apply this effect to your solid. Okay, then make sure that you set size from to width and height sliders, and then mess around with the settings. I will now choose maybe something about 75. Yeah, I think that starts to look quite good. And decrease the border to, let's say, 1. So very, very small and just barely visible. I think that really looks cool, by the way. Then select your grid and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Make sure to set the blend mode to normal and choose invert grid. And then just increase the border to make these squares a bit smaller. So maybe something like that. Very, very small actually. Then go to feather and change the settings for width and height to, let's say, 2 for example, or even 5. Or let's say even 10, I don't know, it's really about messing around with these settings. And then again increase the border to make very small dots. So I think about 80 or 82 looks quite good, or even 85. And then choose this control point and move those dots to align them with these lines. So just something like that looks good, I think. Yeah. And then zoom out a bit. And yeah, I think that looks kind of cool. Of course, you can then again choose, for example, soft light, and then increase or decrease the opacity to make it a bit more or less present in your overall animation. Okay, let's hit U to close the settings as well. And yeah, as you can see, it's just about adding more and more details for your background. And of course, the more details you add, the more awesome it will look. I will now also show you a couple of more tricks before I finish this tutorial. So the next steps you may want to add is, for example, some kind of HUD elements. I will make that very fast, this part, because I already did a very detailed tutorial about creating HUD interfaces. So if you always wanted to learn how to create interfaces like that, I will post a link to my old tutorial about HUD elements. So yeah, therefore I want to create or to select my ellipse tool right here, and then just draw a nice circle. Then go to your grid and guide options and make sure to activate the grid. Then select your shape layer and try to align it with some of these lines right here, because as you can see, our anchor point isn't in the perfect center. I don't know why this is by default, but we have to fix it before we can rotate it perfectly. So yeah, just try to align it with some of these lines right here. Then choose your pen behind tool and drag your anchor point to the center of your circle. You only have to do this one time, because later you can always hit Ctrl D to duplicate your shape layer. Then let's open up our content by hitting U 2 times on your keyboard. Let's make the fill invisible and go to stroke options. Increase the stroke width to something, let's say about 50 for example. Then increase the size, so make it very, very big actually. So maybe about 2000 pixels in this case. Let's increase the stroke width even further to something about 75 or even 100. Then go to your dashes options and hit the plus icon, and then just mess around with the settings. You can always add more dashes and more adjustments. So you can really fine tune those kind of HUD elements. But for the moment I will just leave it as it is. As I said before, I have already made a tutorial about that. So let's close everything, call this layer HUD element number 1 for example. Then hit the toggle switch modes or F4 on your keyboard and select a 3D layer or make it a 3D layer. Then hit R for rotation and go to X rotation and set it to 90 degrees. And then you can, for example, move it at the bottom or at the top of our image, so something about that. Then of course you can duplicate this layer and move it up, so maybe something like that. Then hit R for rotation and alt click the Z rotation and type in wiggle 0.25, let's say 270. So the first one is frequency, how many times a second you want to change, and the second value is the amount. In this case it's 270 degrees, so let's copy that expression, then hit U, and then paste that as well in our top HUD element. And what this expression does, as I said, it just animates our spheres or HUD elements randomly. So it's the same, for example, as our background right here. Then of course you can also tint or colorize these HUD elements. So go to Effects and Presets window and type in tint and apply this effect to your HUD element. And then choose the white color in this case, and for example choose red. Then copy this effect and paste it for our top HUD element. And yeah, then as well you can also change the blend mode if you want. So hit again toggle switch modes and for example choose soft light, multiply, I don't know, add for example. It's really up on you to choose, but I will now leave it for example with multiply. And yeah, then you can also duplicate these layers. Then for example scale them down or scale them up, make them bigger or smaller. For example delete the dashes or create new dashes. It's really up on you to create some very cool looking kind of elements. So yeah, maybe something like that. So just add more and more details. Like I said, you can always mess around with the colors as well and the blend modes. You can also add, for example, an effect called glow. Where is it? Stylized glow, and apply this effect to your HUD element. So as you can see, it just starts to glow a bit before and after. So yeah, it's really up on you to, like I said before, make more and more details to make it look, just make it look more awesome. And before we finish, I want to show you one very cool way to create something like an LED screen. Therefore, I want to create a new composition. Call it LED screen, for example. Then make sure to uncheck this log aspect ratio and then choose a width of, let's say about 500 and a height of 1000, for example. Click OK. Then zoom out a bit. And then you want to create a new solid, so layer new solid, call it LED dots and choose a height of, let's say something about 750 pixels, click OK. Then go to your Effects and Presets window and type in again CC Ball Action. Apply this effect to your solid. Again, mess around with the grid spacing and the ball size, so maybe, I don't know, maybe something like that looks good. Then select your rectangle tool and draw a nice outline around your dots right here and drag it below your LED dots. Then hit U 2 times to open up the settings, change the fill color to white and change the opacity to something around, let's say for example 50%, and then increase the stroke value if you want. So for example let's say something about 12 in this case. You can then move it around and try to make it align as perfect as possible. I now make it very rough to save some time, so yeah, let's even make the size bigger, so you can always change the size on the rectangle path. Make sure to uncheck this chain link so that you can scale them up separately. And let's make it, for example, 800. That looks good. Hit U to close it, call this layer, for example, frame. Then apply an effect called CC Glass. Glass. And this effect is very cool actually. I use it a lot because it tried to simulate the look of glass. Of course, it's not perfect and not realistic, but still it looks better than before. And the only thing you want to change is surface and then softness, height and displacement. So I usually decrease the softness to something about 10. And then I choose, the height at 25 I think is good. And displacement I usually choose twice as much as the height. In this case it's 50. Okay, so as you can see, I think it looks much better than before. So without the glass and with the glass effect. I think that looks good. Then after that you want to activate your grid again. Let's zoom in a bit and choose your pen tool. And then just draw a nice and cool looking arrow. Like I said, I will now do that very rough. You should always try to make it perfectly symmetric and perfectly looking. For example, I think that looks kind of cool. Okay, then again, change the fill color to white. Set the transparency to, let's say, 50 again. And then also increase the stroke value to something about 10 maybe. Then hit U to close all settings and apply your CC glass effect as well. And again, decrease the softness to 10. And let's say the height to 20 and displacement to 40. So let's zoom in a bit. Again, here's the before and after. And let's uncheck our grid for the moment. And then select your shape layer again, hit U 2 times. Then select your shape 1 and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Then use your arrow keys on the keyboard to move it to the right side, for example. So maybe something like that. Then hit U to close all settings, hit P for position. Okay, and then move it again with the arrow keys outside of your window, so something like that. Then, for example, move forward, let's say about 4 seconds. It's really up on you how fast you want this animation to be, so something like 4 seconds I think will be good. And then move it to the right side, also outside of this window, so that this arrow moves from the left to the right side. So if you now hit, let's make it fit. If we now hit 0 to make a short RAM preview, we can see that our arrow, sorry, this will take too long, so come on, our arrow is moving from the left to the right side. And if you now want to make this thing repeat over the time, I will also show you a very cool expression which is called, let's alt click this position and type in loop out type and cycle. Or let's just type in cycle, it really doesn't matter. And sorry, it's cycle. Okay, and hit enter. And what this expression does, it always loops this animation. So this arrow is always starting from the left side and moving to the right side. So very cool stuff right here. Then you can close this LED screen composition and go back to our construction comp. And then you want to take our LED screen and move this comp inside our construction comp. Okay. And then apply an effect called CC cylinder. Okay, let's make this layer solo. And then go to render and choose inside. Okay, let's transform and choose flip horizontal. Okay, and then for example you can move this cylinder in Z space or Z space. So for example, something about that. If you have this kind of edge right here, it's very easy to fix. So you just go to rotation and choose Y rotation and just offset it a bit. So maybe about that. And now as you can see, we have this very cool looking arrow kind of stuff. Of course, you can always change the radius, for example, to about 200. Just be cautious with this effect because as you can see, this scaling is distorting our dots right here. So I would always recommend to choose very small changes, so maybe about 125 max. Okay, if you then want a very distorted kind of look, you can of course select the camera and choose a very wide angle lens, so for example about 20 millimeter. Okay, and then hit C and now move out, and as you can see, this really starts to look like this kind of fisheye effect, so really kind of cool. It's really about messing around with the camera settings. So again, you can choose even a 50 millimeter or you can choose 28 depending on how much wide angle effect you want. I think that looks kind of cool, so I will leave it at 28 millimeters. And if we now go back to our frame, we see that we have a kind of cool looking background. Of course, let's drag this LED screen below our HUD elements and even below our grid, for example. And yeah, maybe change the blend mode again to soft light, for example, or to multiply. I don't know, it's really up on you to choose, or even screen. Yeah, maybe screen looks kinda cool. Maybe hit T for opacity and lower it to -75 or just 75. Okay, and of course maybe add again a glow effect. Okay. And if you want, of course, you can then go back to your LED screen and type in tint and apply this to our arrow layer. Let's call it arrow, by the way, like always, to stay organized. And then map white to red color, because then, as you can see, let's see where the red dot is. I don't know, I don't find it. Let's give me a couple of seconds. Come on. Yeah, here's the red arrow. So it looks a bit more interesting than just with the same color as the LED dots. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope you liked this tutorial. If you find it helpful, please hit the like button, make sure to subscribe. And also please check out my Facebook channel. I will post a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and yeah, I think it's just a great way to keep in touch, to write messages and maybe new tutorial requests or whatever. And yeah, with that being said, I hope I see you next time with part 2 of this tutorial series, where I will show you how to create these kind of sphere elements. So please make sure you don't miss this episode, and yeah, like always, stay creative and have fun.